What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. It is amazing, but football is getting realer and realer by the day. Today, in fact, we will have preseason game number one for the Commanders. To look into it and break it all down, our good buddy Al Galdi is back. Al, what's happening, man?
Hey, good to see you guys. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. For those that are wondering, Al and I are not creating a boy band. We just decided to grow our hair out. Leave us alone.
I'm jealous because I got luscious locks.
Al, I had planned on immediately getting into the Commanders, but I thought with having you on, the news of Andy Pollin sent shockwaves through the district as a guy that kind of helped build this whole thing. I wonder if you could spend a couple of minutes just talking about Andy.
Yeah, Andy's the best, man. I met Andy when I started at 980 as a promotions intern in 1998, and I worked with Andy for 20 plus years, and he's just outstanding. He was so giving with his time, like he always made it a point to try to help younger people and help you learn the business, and he took so much time with me. I was the producer for the show that he did with Steve Zabin for years. I produced the Sports Reporters. That was like one of the first things that I did behind the scenes. And that was like, an education. That was like sitting at the learning tree every day and seeing they did what they did. And, that education, man, I'll never forget that. Like, spending I think it was 4 years I spent producing that show, like in my early 20s, it was like, that was better than any, graduate school I could have ever gone to or anything like that. It was just tremendous to see that up front and personal and on a day in, day out basis. So, Andy's had an awesome career. Honestly, I don't think it's over. I think he'll probably, at the very least, be doing, like part-time work, if not, something more than that. But Andy he's so good. He's always had a really good understanding for how to do this. He's always had a really healthy understanding of how this works. And, I consider him a friend to this day. I mean, I had him on my podcast a few months ago. He'll be fine, but he has had an awesome career. He's one of the godfathers of sports talk radio in Washington, D.C. There's no question about that.
100%.
He was kind enough to come on this show, and it's still the Big Douglas show. Has he been on since you were on with us, George?
I think so. I think maybe, yeah.
But just a wonderful man. He's one of those guys, much like yourself and Kevin Sheen, I put into that bucket where it's like steel trap minds that can like still give you plays from games 20 years ago. And I'm always amazed by that kind of recall. I can barely remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So I always respect guys like that. But you're right. Andy is a godfather and institution in this thing, and whatever he chooses to do next, I'm sure people are standing in line to try to get him to do something with them. So, Andy, shout out to you. All right, on to football. I mean, Al, it's odd. It was like all gung ho, and we were ready to rock and roll, and we had the foot on the accelerator, and then Laramie Tunsil, is gone for the year, and we're now no longer wondering about the left guard, the right guard competition, right? Because there's no competition there anymore, I don't believe. I appreciate the fact they just slide Brandon Coleman out to the left tackle, who, by the way, played that all the way to an NFC championship game just 2 years ago. What were your thoughts on the Tunsil injury and maybe the bigger impact that it has on the other four offensive linemen? Because I think that's really where the impact goes.
Yeah, and obviously, like, you really can't afford any more injuries with the offensive line, but we know how the NFL works. There probably are going to be some more injuries with the offensive line, and that, you suffer this big one before, forget about the regular season, even the preseason starts, was just devastating. I mean, it was horrible news. There's no sugarcoating the Laramie Tunsil news. There's no, putting a happy face on that news. That was awful news when that broke last Saturday night. I do like that the team acted quickly and decisively in going with Brandon Coleman as the new starting left tackle. That to me suggests a conviction, a belief in Coleman. There was no, hemming and hawing. It was like, okay, Tunsil's out. That's terrible, but we know what we want to do. And I'm with you. I thought Brandon Coleman, as a rookie in 2024, did an admirable job at left tackle. I did not think that he was some, like super weak link at left tackle. The team had, of course, immense success in 2024. If you look at the team's record with Coleman as a starting left tackle, regular season and postseason in 2024, 10-5. Okay, so like this team in with Brandon Coleman as the starting left tackle. Now, is he Tunsil? No, of course not. But that doesn't mean that the season has to be ruined because Tunsil is out. It just questions, well, what if Coleman now gets injured? At least before you said you don't want Tunsil to get hurt, but if Tunsil gets hurt in week 8, it's like, all right, at least you've gotten close to half a season. You can shift Brandon Coleman over, and you can maybe make do with this. Now it's like you really got to cross your fingers that everyone stays healthy. I do think this offensive line can end up being fine, but is it going to be an excellent offensive line? Do you have the upside that you had when Tunsil was at left tackle? No, you don't. I am encouraged by Sam Cosmi. People are raving about Cosmi in camp, that he looks good at right guard, so that's good. Very encouraged to see how Josh Connerly Jr. did as last season went on, so hopefully that improvement continues. But, there's a question mark at center, and now, you have this situation at left tackle, which, is not ideal. I mean, nobody was aiming for this when camp started, for sure.
George, maybe you can remember the numbers off the top of my head. I can't, but we had Lindsay Rhodes on from Sumer Sports the other day, and their metrics that they do, which are incredible.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, they had Josh Connerly as one of the best run blocking tackles in the league. And actually, when who was the other guy from Kansas City that's here, Wiley, was on that list actually when asked to come in last year and do some replacement for Cosmi. Like the run block grades really top 5 or 6 for these guys. So that's nice. I mean, the biggest thing to me that you miss out on is when you have a guy like Tunsil on the left side, whoever's scheming up the offensive line and what they're going to do on offense, like that, check that guy. You don't have to worry about him. Now with Coleman,
right,
you have to see Bates slide over a little bit more, or whoever, is the next tight end after, or you're going to have to see slide protection go that way a bit more. That's one of the great things about having a top 3 or 4 tackle is you don't have to worry about that anymore. So somebody will have to worry about giving him a little help over there.
Yeah, and the other thing too with Tunsil, which I thought was so underrated last year. So he came here having been one of the most penalized offensive linemen in the NFL in recent years. He had a big penalty problem, and he last year really avoided the penalty. He essentially fixed the penalty problem. So the one flaw about Laramie Tunsil, he eradicated last season. So you really felt good about where you were at with him. Obviously, Washington's best left tackle since Trent Williams. The team finally solved left tackle off trading away Trent in April 2020. And now here we are back to having a question mark at left tackle. Now, the good news is, Tunsil will be back certainly next season. Maybe cross your fingers, in December. I mean, we'll hope for the best here, but it's possibly. He's not definitely out for the year, so that's good. But, it's a tough blow. We do have, the ultimate cheat code in Jaden Daniels. So, you'd like to think that helps the cause, but it's tough. And, from a psychological standpoint, off this team getting walloped by injury last season to suffer a big time injury just as training camp is getting going. I mean, man, that was such a buzzkill if you're a Washington fan like we all are.
I agree with that. And I think Laramie Tunsil coming in here, he was a home run addition, right? There was some questions about him being, having these false starts, having these penalties, but also his leadership abilities. But I feel like he came in here. He took Connerly under his wing. He took Brandon Coleman under his wing. And I think the offensive linemen were starting to form some synergy and some consistency. And what's interesting was the offensive line was supposed to be a strength this year. And then now there's some question marks, potentially 2 starters already out, Nick Allegretti being out as well. So it's very interesting. Go ahead. What are you going to say, Al? Sorry.
No, yeah, the Allegretti thing is a giant question mark.
Yeah.
And, it sounds like he's coming back soon, maybe as soon as Sunday, so that's good. But, even if he's healthy, we don't know how he's going to do as a starting center.
Yeah.
The team seems to have confidence in him, so, that counts for something. But we don't know. And again, what if Allegretti gets hurt? Then what?
Yeah.
Because everyone's saying that Julian Good-Jones does not look good. And it does not look good for Matt Golbin that Julian Good-Jones is ahead of Matt Golbin. So, what are we looking at here at center?
They must have hated the guy last year, George. They gave him away for a song. I don't even know if he's starting over there. And they didn't even ask why. They're just like, You know what? Have a great life, kid. Must have hated him.
That's what I was going to ask Al. Al, I guess like we let Biotis go. I guess that to me might be the one blemish so far. Like, I'm actually pro Adam Peters. There's some people that kind of question his decisions over the past couple of years. I think he's done a great job for the most part. The Tyler Biotis like release, I do think was maybe pretty, maybe a little bit jumped the gun with that one. I guess, would you explore potentially trading away an asset for 2027 to get a center to kind of back up Allegretti, or do you think that kind of doubles down, like they get diminished returns, kind of double down on the mistake?
Well, what I'd like to see is, when we get the cut downs to 53, if there's somebody who you like, you gobble that guy up, and you do like you did with Noah Brown 2 years ago, where you get a halfway decent player off the cuts to 53. I mean, I feel like that would be more likely. If you're, I don't know that anyone worth trading for is going to be available, so but look, you never know. So I don't want to be too dismissive of that, but I feel like what's probably more likely is you get all these guys cut. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of players are going to be cut. You'd like to think there will be someone there who you could grab and put at center. It was interesting too. Dan Quinn this week mentioned that I think it was Trent Scott who's actually has gotten some reps at center, and so you wonder if maybe internally there's an option that we're not necessarily thinking of right now who could maybe emerge as a backup here. So center's a concern. The Biotis thing was strange. I thought if they really liked Tyler Linderbaum, they should have just paid what it took to get him.
$27 million? You wouldn't have been upset by that?
No, because two things. Number one, the cap keeps going up, $20 million a year. So what looks like an overpay now is not going to look so bad in a few years.
Yeah.
And if you believe a guy is elite, just pay what it takes to get him, and the contract will not look so bad as long as the guy is the player who you think he is. Now, if he's not that good, or if he's mid, then that's a mistake to pay him that kind of money. But, at the end of the day, a few $1 million here or there does not matter for a really good player, especially in this environment of the rising cap.
I agree with that. That being said, Alan, obviously, we're playing the Dolphins today on Friday. We've been around long enough and covering the team long enough where I feel like the joint practices, you kind of learn more, you kind of gather more from that information there. I'm curious, what are your thoughts and takeaways so far from camp, what you heard from Wednesday, joint practice, and then what are you looking for today in this game? You got operations, a specific player to stand out. What are you watching for tonight?
So in terms of camp, I think the number one item from camp is that Jaden Daniels looks good. I mean, I don't think we should ever look past the most important player on the team. The fact that he tore it up against the Dolphins on Wednesday, I mean, by all accounts, he tore it up. I don't think that's like a fanboy account. Like, that's what happened. He tore it up. Miami Dolphins media member said that Daniels tore it up. For all of the talk the last 24, 48 hours about the Jaden Daniels LSU story, the most important Jaden Daniels story this week is that Jaden Daniels humiliated the Dolphins on Wednesday.
1,000%. Exactly.
I don't think we should lose sight of that. So I think that's the number one story.
And he's still healthy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that was one thing I thought of when Tunsil got hurt. I was like, God forbid Daniels goes down in camp. Like, imagine what we'd be saying right now.
Yeah.
But, in terms of tonight, I mean, it sounds like starters / key players aren't playing. We'll find out soon enough. I do think this battle for the number 3 quarterback does matter. So, assuming we see a lot of Sam Hartman and Nathan Kaliak-Manis, does one guy look especially good? I think that's a big deal. I think the offensive line, we'll see who plays, but this team needs depth with the offensive line. I think what we see there matters. The battle at receiver is the fiercest battle at receiver in a Washington training camp in a long time.
How do you like that one playing out, Al?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call because it sure seems like at least one or two at least decent players are going to get cut here. I mean, if you're probably not keeping more than 7, and there is this perceived top 8. And so someone's getting cut, whether it's, Van Jefferson or De'Ami Brown or Treylon Burks or whoever, unless someone gets traded, which I guess is possible, or gets hurt. That's possible too. But yeah, the battle at receiver is big. And then, there's the kicker competition where it sure seems like Drew Stevens is in the lead. Jake Moody started off doing well, then really struggled. And I know each guy did well in the joint practice with Miami. So this is an ongoing thing. The preseason games matter a ton. But what happens in the kicker competition, I think, is a really big deal tonight.
Al, I think you brought up a good point. I think with the addition of Stephon Diggs, actually, what he did is he leveled out the wide receiver depth. That felt like we were kind of stretching and maybe asking for people to do one step above what they're supposed to do on the wide receiving chart. But now with Stephon Diggs, everything kind of bumped into the right spot. And I think it's a little more comfortable there. Quick follow-up to that. Do you have a preference on how much players play on a preseason game? I know it's always like an area of contention. Like, should they be out there? Should we protect their health? What are your thoughts? What do you want to see tonight?
So there's no right answer because you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. You know, if you play guys and they get hurt, you feel like a fool. If you don't play guys and you get off to a slow start, then you feel like a fool. You know, what you always try to do, right, is give guys just enough of a taste to feel good to go for the regular season, but hopefully get everyone the heck out of there before anybody gets hurt. You know, I think if ever there's an argument for starters / key players to play more in a preseason than normal, this preseason for Washington is it. The team is coming off an awful season. The team has 2 new coordinators. The QB1 last season barely played because he got injured 4 times. So, like, if you said to me, yeah, we're going to play our key guys a decent amount this preseason, I could see that. I don't think that's nuts. But at the same time, they have the 2 joint practices. Jaden Daniels just killed it 2 days ago. We know what Daniels is when healthy. I mean, I think, you know, it's okay to say that. So, like, if you want to say, we don't want to risk anything with this guy in the preseason, we're not going to play him. We're not going to play other key guys. That's fine, too. I mean, do we think that Terry McLaurin and Stephon Diggs really need to play in the preseason? You know, probably not. They probably can get away with not doing that. So I think a lot of this is a case-by-case basis, a team-by-team basis. You as a coach have to have a feel for, do our guys really need this or don't they? Do our guys need to play in the preseason or don't they? But I think the fact that they have the 2 joint practices helps because I do think a lot of these teams now see the joint practices as replacements for the preseason games. That's certainly the way Washington behaved last year with the joint practice at New England and then the preseason game at New England. Washington, shortly before kickoff of that game, announced that 30 players did not dress for that game. So I would not be surprised if we got a similar announcement tonight, but we'll see.
One of the interesting, I guess the last interesting thing before we talk about the defense a little bit, the tight end room is fascinating. You know, I mean, this is like, we got a little bit of yank off last year. We heard like little rumors and birds chirping. This year, it sounds like he's that guy that we're going to hear about a ton in training camp. And maybe it's more than just training camp pizzazz. I mean, this is a former quarterback that can move a little bit. What's the chance they hold on to, particularly with Tunsil down and the idea that maybe you'll have to run more 13 kind of personnel? I mean, how many tight ends do you realistically see them keeping, and how does it affect the running back room?
Yeah, and we know the team likes Lawrence Cager, so like there's that. And we know that Okonkwo, Bates, and Sinnott are making the team. Again, unless, you know, like Sinnott got traded, but I don't see that happening. So, the Yankoff thing has been really interesting because people are like gushing about Colson Yankoff in training camp, and I don't know.
Touchdown today.
Yeah, and you know, if he does well in the preseason, look, I know we do this every year where we say, well, I don't know if you can get him to the practice squad, and then they get everyone to the practice squad, right? But I don't know with Colson Yankoff, I don't know if we could get him to the practice squad. So, like, that's something to think about too. The other thing too is, and I'm only half kidding when I say this, if Washington only keeps 2 quarterbacks on the initial 53, would there not be some value in having a former quarterback in Colson Yankoff on the 53 so that if, God forbid, you have to go to a third quarterback, at least you have someone who's played the position to at least some extent. But, yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely keeping 4 tight ends. I mean, that seems like a pretty safe thing to say. And you know, the project's got the practice squad someone. I mean, right now you would think it's Cager, but again, they seem to like Cager. Dan Quinn's brought him up and talked him up multiple times.
They brought in weapons for Daniels, whether people admitted it or not. I know Diggs came in late, but they actually have added between Rachaad White, you know, who I don't know could end up 3rd on the team in targets possibly. Okonkwo, but who before Steph Diggs here, I thought would be 2nd on the team in targets. Maybe he still will be. So this notion they didn't like try to elevate for Daniels, I think is silly. The other thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough, I think the biggest thing that they did for Jaden Daniels was this defense. his defense is different than anything we've seen before here in a long time. And when we have on the other day, but he was telling us, he was live from camp, and basically he's like
Felix Trammell.
Felix Trammell, who's great. He was saying, that like the first 5 series on defense against Jaden, it was like 4 corners one time, 2 defensive linemen. Next time it was 6 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers and 5 safeties in one corner, whatever the math is. But it's just like with that old ass defense they've been running the last couple of years, you wonder how much Jaden was actually learning from seeing the defense. I mean, yes, I know we had a Hall of Famer over there, but this year that's what the defense is doing, right? They're playing this current modern style defense where they're disguising everything and synthesizing the way it looks. And by all accounts, Jaden's keeping up. To me, that may be the biggest thing they've done to help me. Imagine Jaden playing with a lead for once.
Yeah, and I think it works the other way too. I think the defense is benefiting from the offense being more multiple and more varied, and you could say more modern. One of the things that I really do like about what David Blau is doing and what Durante Jones is doing is that it really does seem like our team now is going with these progressive, forward-thinking systems, especially on defense. What Brian Flores is doing is like cutting edge. And I think one of the most interesting things that Dan Quinn has said during camp was, I think it was 2 weeks ago he said this. He basically admitted, I was surprised this did not get more attention. He basically admitted that his style of defense is antiquated and that what Durante Jones is doing is at like the forefront of modern thinking when it comes to NFL defense. And, I give Quinn a lot of credit for saying that because like, that's not an easy thing to say. Dan Quinn has been a high level defensive coordinator. His defenses in Seattle and Dallas were really good. His defenses here have not been good. And that he was man enough to admit that his style, I mean, he almost was like, it doesn't work anymore, which I was like, whoa, and that opens up some other questions. But the fact that like you recognize that and now the team is going with something that is more cutting edge. I mean, I think that's the way to do this. Now, we got to see if it works, right?
Yeah.
And like Brian Flores, what he does in Minnesota has been lethal. Do we have the personnel to pull that off? Like this thing of cornerback doesn't matter so much anymore because of all the exotic looks and all of the blitzing and all of the stuff that happens up front. That sounds awesome, but do we have the personnel to pull that off? And we're going to find that out. But I don't know how you don't like what the team is doing defensively. I don't know how you don't like what the team did in free agency and in the draft defensively. Like, we all feel so much better about the defensive personnel, younger, faster. So it's just a matter of like it coming together and performing here. But I'm excited about this defense. And, if Jaden Daniels is healthy, you don't need the defense to be great. You just need it to be decent. Okay. It can't be awful like it was last year. Just be decent. That's really what you need. Decent defense, healthy Jaden Daniels, and this team can make the playoffs.
Sounds great. And it's kind of funny, actually. I don't know if you guys caught so Jeremy Reeves was actually on John Kimes' podcast the other day, and Jeremy Reeves said what he's really excited about this year is that the offense is going to be the dictator. They're going to be the hammer. They're going to be aggressive as opposed to being reactive with the previous system. They played more of a cover 3 zone under Joe Witt, which I found pretty interesting. And then Doug, I don't know if you recall, we had Thor Nystrom on our show about a month or so ago, who's he's a Vikings insider. He covered the team pretty well, and he talked about the defense is aggressive and it is fantastic, but the only concern would be the adaptation of it because it is different, it is new. We haven't done this before. It's going to be, do the pieces do fit, as you kind of alluded to, Alec? Are these players that we have now, are they going to fit to the positions and understand the scheme very early on? It might be fantastic as the year goes on, but maybe expect a bump week 1, week 2. We'll see what happens there. That being said, I guess tonight I do want to watch some of the players out there. Are you concerned about the cornerback room, Al? Because we see Trey Amos has been gone. He hasn't really practiced that much. Practiced maybe 1 hour all summer. Supposed to be our CB1. Mikey Sanderson, who I do like, but I know he's kind of having an up and down camp. Then we see Rasul Douglas and Amik Robertson, who've been kind of like journeymen throughout their careers, but they've been playing pretty well. Are you comfortable with the cornerback room right now and the secondary overall?
No, I'm not. Now, again, the idea with this Durante Jones style of defense is that cornerback doesn't matter as much as it normally does. So, okay. But still, it's hard to accept fully in the modern NFL that cornerback isn't going to matter much, right? In this pass-happy NFL, like, don't you need to have at least decent cornerback play? And what I think is such an indictment of the cornerback group is that the team signs Rasul Douglas, and you could argue that he instantly became the team's best cornerback. Okay,
True.
like there's a case to be made for that, given the
Absolutely.
season that he had last year.
Yep.
Trey Amos is having a hard time staying healthy. Mikey Sanders and Amik Robertson.
I was stunned that they said that injury to Trey Amos, because I don't think they had to, but they most certainly, like, this was an ankle or something, right? It was not the thigh, and I was surprised that they said that, because they had to know what that was going to make people think is, oh no, he's injury prone. If it was just the same thing lingering, then you say, yeah, it's a lingering. Brand new injury that they didn't have to tell you about, I thought was strange.
Yeah, now we don't know if they're all related or not, but he's having a hard time staying healthy. Sanders and Robertson, each guy had a rough season last year, okay? So, like, what are you looking at cornerback right now in terms of real certainty? You don't have it. Now, there's upside, okay? Like, Sanders 2 years ago did a lot of nice things as a rookie, and Amik Robertson has had some success, and I did like what we saw from Trey Amos last season, like I think most people did, but we've done this before where we have optimism with a cornerback group for Washington, or we can kind of talk ourselves into the cornerback group maybe being decent. And then the cornerback group isn't decent. The cornerback group is a real problem. And that would be my concern with this group. When you're talking about a bunch of ifs and maybes and, well, this could be the case, that it usually doesn't all break in the positive way. Like, usually you get a lot of disappointment when you do that. So I'm concerned about cornerback, but the team doesn't seem to be, just because of the lack of activity at cornerback this past offseason.
It's contract year Daron Payne time, Al. Are you excited about that?
I'm pumped. I hope he's pumped. And here's my deal with Daron Payne. I hope he kills it in this contract season, and then I hope somebody else pays him. I want no part of our team paying him again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I'm not making that mistake again if I'm Washington. But I hope Daron Payne is awesome this season, and then I hope he gets a fat contract just from somebody else.
Al, who are you? Go ahead, sorry, Doug.
My bad, George. Are you surprised, like me, very surprised, that it sounds like Luvu has been wearing the green dot on defense and not Sonny Styles? And while I appreciate it's not the rookie maybe they just think that's too early, but I had heard rumors maybe, Cross would get the green dot and could fill it in from there. Luvu apparently has gotten it. I was shocked when I heard that.
The only reason I wasn't shocked is that Dan Quinn, whenever he would get asked about like who is replacing Bobby Wagner's leadership, Quinn always would mention Luvu. And so that was kind of a tell of like, okay, first of all, I know some people have talked about might Luvu get cut. I mean, boy, it sure doesn't seem like that's happening now. No. But yeah, so that was the only reason. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, when they took Sonny Styles, I think we all kind of anticipated he would end up being the green dot guy on defense. And he still very well could be, right? I mean, it's still early enough to where something like that could change. But I think this linebacker group is as loaded as any Washington linebacker group in years. Yeah. And you think about what Durante Jones could do with Chanel and Luvu and Styles, and there are other intriguing pieces in that linebacker group. This could be a lot of fun with these guys. We had great linebacker play in 24 with Wagner and Luvu, but then there, after those two, like there wasn't much. Now it's at least 3 deep, if not more. And this could be a lot of fun with these guys.
Al, my final question for you. Who are you high on going into the season, maybe on the offense and defensive side of the ball? And then who intrigues you? This could be more of like a positive or maybe like an inquisitive, like, I don't know if they're going to make it kind of thing as well, like on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Like, who stands out and who are you watching for in particular?
So I'm really excited about Antonio Williams. Okay. This team has not had a rookie receiver really make an impact since Terry McLaurin in 2019. And before that, you're looking at Jamison Crowder in 2015. And like there just have been very few rookie receivers for Washington in recent years who've done much. And I think Antonio Williams could be a guy who does some things, especially in this David Blau offense. So I'm pumped to see what Antonio Williams does. On defense, I like Nick Cross. I mean, I'm not going out on a limb and saying that. I know a lot of people like Nick Cross, but I just think there are many things to like about him. And, with the safety group, it's an odd deal. I don't know what to make of Quan Martin anymore. He had a debacle of a season last year. Will Harris was okay when he played, but he's an older player, certainly from an NFL standpoint. So hard to say for sure what you'll get from him. But I feel like Nick Cross really could end up being one of the more valuable players on defense this season. So I'm pumped about that. In terms of concern, I mean, we talked about the cornerback group. I also would say this. I really feel like it's step up time for Johnny Newton. And, I don't like how he was a second round pick who, by the way, was talked about as having been first round worthy.
Yeah, fell. Exactly. Yep.
And we're still waiting for him to really do much of anything. I know he had the good pass rush game last year. I think it was against Dallas, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yep.
But actually, if you look at his PFF numbers for that game, his run defense was horrible. So he happened to get a few sacks. Great. We know enough now about sacks. They're not the end all be all for judging people.
Yeah.
And I need to see more from Johnny Newton. And it's past time for us to see more from Johnny Newton. His first 2 years have been very underwhelming. So I really feel like it's step up time to see Johnny Newton come forward. And then with the offensive line, I would just say this. I really respect what Chris Paul did last season, going from a guy who had not done much here to supplanting Brandon Coleman at left guard and then being the starting left guard for the final 15 games. And by the way, not missing a single snap. He played on 100% of the offensive snaps over the final 15 games. But I would like to see Paul do it again. It was a little odd how there was not much of a free agent market for him this past offseason. Yeah. And a lot of people everyone said Paul's gone. Chris Paul's gone. They're not going to resign Chris Paul.
Guy. 100%.
They re-signed Chris Paul, and if you look at the details of the contract, he got like a nothing contract. He kind of got humbled in free agency. Yeah. So the rest of the league apparently wasn't impressed with Chris Paul's 2025 season. So I'm interested to see how he does this season. Is he the left guard moving forward, or is this like a 1 or 2 season thing, but Washington needs to upgrade at that spot?
He probably got a bump professionally on the field, and then probably got knocked all at the same time for having Laramie Tunsil play next to him. You know what I mean? Like that's going to make anybody look better. Al, last one for me, and we'll get you out of here. The NFC quietly has become really strong with a lot of very good players scattered throughout the division. Did AP do enough to be competitive with a division? I mean, that Giants defense is nasty. If the quarterback comes out any good, I mean, they've got a chance to be okay. The Eagles, I mean, a new offense, but Jalen Hurts just kind of seems to go out there and run them. And I think we know of all the star power, at least on offense, that Dallas has. Has AP done enough to be competitive this year?
Yeah, I think he has. I think that, and this is an overly simplistic way of looking at things, but if Jaden Daniels is healthy, I do think this team has a chance. I think it kind of is as simple as that. But in terms of upgrading the roster, yeah, I do feel like the roster has been upgraded. We'll see to what extent. One of the real disappointments of last season was that, yes, the injuries, but also, yes, the roster was not as good as we thought. And that was disappointing for sure. I do feel like now with the team getting younger and faster on defense that you can reasonably feel better about what this team has on defense. And hopefully there will be better coaching too. I would also say this, though. It's not a good look for this regime that 2 seasons in, you had to revamp the coaching staff. Okay? That's not a good look for anybody.
Entirely.
Yeah. And, one of the things that was said when the team hired Dan Quinn was, well, look at the coaching staff.
He knows people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. Well, I would now turn that around and say, well, look at the coaching staff he put together. They had to revamp it 2 seasons into the tenure.
You think those are do you think those are Dan's picks this year? Where you think High came down and said, you know what, let's look at these guys.
So that's possible. The reporting has been that they were Dan Quinn's picks. So I can only go off that. I mean, I think what's probably safe to say is it's a combination of Quinn and Peters. I don't think Quinn is going to make a hire that Peters doesn't approve of, but it sounds like a lot of what was done with the staff, Dan Quinn did. But look, I think Dan Quinn felt the pressure to do this because I think Dan Quinn knows another bad season and he's gone. And I don't know that he's getting a third head coaching shot in the NFL. There's real pressure on Dan Quinn, as I think most of us are aware. But I think when it comes to what AP has done, I don't think it's just about the roster. I think it's also about this coaching staff, which, it all falls under Peters' purview, right? Even if
Yep.
Quinn picked these guys, ultimately Adam Peters runs Washington Commanders football operations. And it is a big deal that Washington got these coaching staff changes right, that these coordinator hires work, okay? That David Blau is an upgrade over Cliff Kingsbury, that Durante Jones at last is a defensive coordinator who can really do some good work here. Like, this stuff matters. This stuff is a big deal. And, I hope like heck it works out. I'm excited about both guys, but, as we all know with the NFL, we all know nothing in August, okay? Like, we could say whatever we want. We all know nothing. And so we just have to see how things go.
Me and George like to think we know stuff.
A little bit.
We know nothing.
Absolutely.
This is always one of our greatest shows when you come on. Let's get back together in a couple of weeks and see if it looks like they put this thing together right.
I hope so, man. I always enjoy talking with you guys, so thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Al.